The air in the village of Oakhaven always hummed with the symphony of the verdant heart jungle. It was a living, breathing entity, its canopy a vast, emerald ceiling that stretched to the horizon, its roots delving deep into the very soul of the earth. For Kale, still on the cusp of true shamanhood, the jungle was more than just his home. It was his teacher, his elder, his first and truest friend. At 18, with eyes the color of ancient moss and hair like dark river stones, Kale carried the weight of his lineage, the last direct descendant of the great shamaness Alara. His days were spent learning the intricate language of the forest, the rustle of leaves as a greeting, the call of the sun-winged parrots as a warning, the deep, resonant thrumming of the spirit trees as a hymn. He knew which leaves could soothe a fever, which roots could grant vivid dreams, and how to speak to the river serpent spirit for safe passage. Yet, despite his knowledge, a deep unease had begun to settle over the jungle, a discordant note in its otherwise harmonious song. It began subtly, a faint dissonance. The glow moss, which usually pulsed with a gentle, bioluminescent light in the twilight hours, seemed dimmer. The calls of the forest creatures grew less frequent, their melodies tinged with a strange, melancholic quiet. Then the water lily pools, once vibrant tapestries of pinks and purples, started to show patches of sickly brown, their usually buoyant leaves sagging. Elder Maeve, the village's current shaman and Kale's mentor, noticed it too. Her ancient face, usually a map of kind wrinkles, was now etched with worry. She spent hours in the Heartwood Grove, where the village's eldest spirit tree, Grandmother Willow, stood, her roots entwined with the very foundation of Oakhaven. But even Grandmother Willow, a bastion of strength and wisdom for generations, seemed afflicted. Her normally vibrant, weeping branches drooped, a faint gray creeping into their verdant green. One morning, Kale found Maeve collapsed beside Grandmother Willow, her breathing shallow, her skin clammy. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through him. He had seen the blight affect plants and animals, but never a human, never one so deeply connected to the jungle as Maeve. He carried her back to her hut, his heart pounding a frantic drum against his ribs. The verdant heart. It bleeds, Kale, Maeve whispered, her voice raspy, her eyes clouded with fever. The shadow blight. It spreads from the deep places. It drains the essence, silences the spirits. Kale had heard tales of the shadow blight, ancient legends whispered around campfires, tales of a time when the jungle itself had nearly died. It was a corruption that consumed life, not by fire or flood, but by an insidious spiritual drain. Only a shaman of immense power, attuned to the deepest rhythms of the jungle, could hope to counter it. He felt a tremor of doubt. He was young, his spirit sight still flickering, his connection to the greater spirits tenuous. "What must I do, Elder?" Kale implored, gripping her frail hand. "You must go." To the sunken heart, Maeve choked out, pointing a trembling finger vaguely towards the deepest, most uncharted part of the jungle, where the great spirit serpents coil, where the skyfall caves echo. There lies the source, or the cure. She closed her eyes, her breath growing shallower. Kale knew the sunken heart. It was a place of myth and legend, a realm so deep within the jungle that few had ever returned from it. It was said to be where the jungle's original magic resided, untamed and potent, a place where ancient spirits slept and dream-eaters roamed. His stomach churned with a mixture of terror and fierce resolve. He was the last, the only one. He spent the rest of the day preparing. He gathered dried herbs for poultices and infusions, sharpened his bone knife, filled his water skin from the village's pure spring. He spoke to his familiar, a small, vibrant tree frog named Pip, who usually rode on his shoulder. Pip, sensing the gravity of the situation, clung to him tighter than usual, his large, golden eyes reflecting Kale's own apprehension. As dusk settled, painting the jungle canopy in hues of violet and deep orange, Kale knelt before Grandmother Willow. He placed his hands on her ancient bark, closing his eyes, reaching out with his nascent shamanic senses. He felt a profound weariness, a slow, spiritual bleed from the tree. But beneath the decay, a faint, stubborn pulse remained, a whisper of hope. "I will save you," he vowed, his voice barely audible but resolute. "I will save us all." He left Oakhaven under the watchful gaze of the night blossoms, Pip perched silently on his shoulder. The air grew heavier the deeper he ventured, the familiar chirps and calls of the jungle muted, replaced by an unsettling quiet. The path, which Kale usually traversed with ease, now felt foreboding. Vines seemed to twist into menacing shapes, shadows deepened, and the very air felt thick with unseen dread. His first real encounter with the Blight's power came when he stumbled upon a clearing. Usually, a vibrant tapestry of phosphorescent fungi glowed here, illuminating the delicate dance of fireflies. Tonight, the fungi were a dull, sickly gray, and the ground was littered with the desiccated husks of insects, their vital energy seemingly sucked dry. A cold dread settled in Kale's chest. This was far worse than he had imagined. He pressed on, relying on his instincts and the faint guidance of Maeve's words. The trees grew taller here, their branches weaving a dense, almost impenetrable roof that blocked out the sky. The light grew scarce, forcing Kale to rely on the faint glow of the remaining glowmoss and Pip's occasional soft croaks. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled through the undergrowth. Kale froze, his hand instinctively going to his knife. Through the gloom, two eyes, glowing with an unnatural, malevolent red, emerged. It was a jungle cat, a creature of sleek power and stealth, usually elusive but never aggressive without cause. But this one was different. Its fur was matted, its normally vibrant striped pattern dulled, and a dark, swirling aura seemed to emanate from its gaunt frame. It was sick, corrupted. "Spirit of the verdant heart," Kale whispered, trying to project calm and empathy, as Maeve had taught him. "Why do you suffer?" The cat snarled, a guttural sound of pure rage, and lunged. Kale barely dodged, rolling to the side as razor claws tore through the air where he had stood. This was not a normal animal. It was consumed by the Blight, a puppet of the draining darkness. He couldn't fight it with a knife. He needed to reach its spirit. Closing his eyes for a brief, perilous moment, Kale reached out with his mind, trying to connect with the beast's essence. He felt a storm of pain, confusion, and a deep, gnawing hunger, not for food, but for the very life force it could no longer produce within itself. The Blight was like a parasitic spirit, feeding on the host, turning it into a desperate vessel. He opened his eyes just as the cat prepared another pounce. This time, Kale did not move to dodge. Instead, he raised his hands, chanting softly, words of ancient blessing and release that Maeve had taught him for guiding spirits. A faint, emerald glow emanated from his palms. It was weak, but it was there. The cat hesitated, its red eyes flickering, a flicker of its true self momentarily piercing through the corruption. The emerald light wasn't a threat. It was warmth, a remembered solace. But the Blight was strong. With a shudder, the red glow intensified, and the cat let out a desperate, pained roar, fighting the momentary clarity. Kale knew he didn't have the strength to heal a creature this corrupted directly. Not yet. He needed a different approach. He focused the emerald glow, not on the cat, but on the earth beneath its paws, on the nearby roots of a towering ironwood tree. He felt the jungle's pain, its struggle against the Blight. He infused the light with a plea, a resonance, calling to the dormant, untainted life force within the earth. A faint tremor ran through the ground. From the roots, a shimmer of silver blue began to rise, a faint, ethereal mist. It was a spirit vine, a rare, sentient plant spirit that could bind and purify. It was weak, barely clinging to existence against the Blight, but Kale's plea had reached it. The spirit vine, fragile yet determined, snaked out from the ground, its tendrils glowing with a faint, purifying light. It moved slowly, deliberately, towards the corrupted jungle cat. The cat, sensing a new spiritual presence, snarled, but the vine moved with an almost hypnotic grace. It brushed against the cat's matted fur, and where it touched, the dark aura receded slightly, like smoke dissipating in a breeze. The cat roared, not in aggression, but in pain, as if the contact was burning away the corruption. It thrashed, trying to dislodge the vine, but the tendrils gently but firmly wrapped around its legs, anchoring it. Kale continued his chanting, focusing his dwindling energy on sustaining the spirit vine. Slowly, agonizingly, the red light in the cat's eyes began to fade, replaced by its natural golden hue, though still clouded with confusion and residual pain. The dark aura around it thinned, revealing glimpses of its former sleek beauty. The spirit vine, its own energy visibly draining, released the cat. The jungle cat collapsed, panting heavily, its body shuddering. It was weakened, exhausted, but the malevolent red glow was gone. It looked at Kale with clouded, tired eyes, no longer aggressive, but with a deep, wordless understanding. Then, with a final, weary sigh, it stumbled away into the deeper shadows, seeking refuge and rest, its spirit now free from the blight's direct influence. Kale slumped against a tree, sweat beading on his forehead, his own energy severely depleted. His hands still glowed faintly, but the emerald light was weak, sputtering. Pip chirped worriedly, nudging his cheek. "It's all right, Pip," Kale murmured, though his voice trembled. It worked. Mostly. He had purified the spirit, but not healed the physical toll of the blight. It was a start. It also confirmed his deepest fear. The blight was insidious, corrupting the very life force of creatures and plants, turning them against their nature. He gathered his strength, knowing he couldn't rest here. The deeper he went, the stronger the blight's hold would be. He needed to find the sunken heart, where the great spirit serpents coiled, where the skyfall caves echoed. That was the only path. As he moved deeper, the jungle became even more alien. The trees twisted into grotesque, skeletal shapes, their leaves shriveled. The ground was choked with thorny, black vines that seemed to writhe with a life of their own, not the vibrant life of growth, but the frenzied spasm of decay. The air grew heavy and cold, despite the jungle's natural humidity, carrying a faint, metallic tang. He found himself navigating through a section where the canopy was so dense, it was perpetually twilight. Here, the glow moss was completely extinguished, and only the occasional, sickly flicker of a corrupted fungus provided any light. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the drip of stagnant water and the distant, mournful cries of unseen creatures, cries that sounded less like animals and more like the wails of lost spirits. Kale had to use all his senses. He felt for subtle air currents, listened for the faint murmur of hidden streams, and even tasted the humidity for clues about the direction of the sunken heart. Pip, usually chatty, remained silent, his tiny body trembling against Kale's neck. Even the familiar instincts were overwhelmed by the oppressive aura of the blight. After hours of arduous travel, he stumbled upon a landmark that sent a shiver down his spine. It was a massive, ancient banyan tree, its countless aerial roots forming a colossal, living cathedral. Maeve had spoken of it in legends, the Weeping Sentinel, said to mark the entrance to the deeper mysteries of the verdant heart. But this sentinel was weeping black, viscous sap that oozed down its majestic bark like tar. Its roots, usually firm and welcoming, were gnarled and contorted, their usual spiritual energy replaced by a cold, draining emptiness. Beneath the weeping sentinel, a gaping maw opened into the earth, a vast cave entrance, shrouded in mist that smelled of decay and stale air. This had to be one of the Skyfall caves, the mythical gateway to the sunken heart. Kale hesitated at the threshold. The air inside was heavy, thick with spiritual corruption. He could feel it pressing against his skin, seeping into his bones. It was a place where light and life struggled to exist. He thought of Maeve, lying weakened, and Grandmother Willow, fading. He thought of his village, of the jungle he loved, slowly being consumed. Taking a deep, bracing breath, he stepped into the darkness, the faint, shimmering remnants of his emerald light being the only thing he carried into the abyssal maw of the Skyfall caves. The true adventure, he realized, had just begun. He was entering the very heart of the Blight, alone, with only his fledgling shamanic powers and an unwavering will. The whispers of the jungle were fading, but a new, more terrifying whisper had begun, the whisper of a dying world. The Skyfall caves lived up to their ominous name. As Kale delved deeper, the air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something acrid, almost metallic, like blood and rust. The faint light from the jungle outside quickly vanished, replaced by an absolute, crushing darkness. Kale's emerald glow, now a mere flicker, seemed utterly swallowed by the vast, echoing chambers. He drew upon his shamanic senses, feeling for the subtle shifts in the earth, the unseen currents of air, the faint, distorted echoes of spiritual presences. The cave walls were not mere rock. They were striated with ancient, petrified roots and veins of crystal that, in healthier times, would have pulsed with soft, inner light. Now they were dull, fractured, some oozing the same black sap that marred the weeping sentinel outside. The passage twisted and turned, descending steeply, forcing Kale to rely on his hands, scrambling over slippery, unseen surfaces. Pip, usually so resilient, was trembling uncontrollably, burrowed deep into Kale's tunic, his tiny heart a frantic drum against the young shaman's chest. He could hear sounds now, not the vibrant chorus of the jungle, but a discordant cacophony, a low, guttural growl that echoed from unseen depths, the scuttling of unseen creatures, and most unsettling of all, faint, mournful whispers carried on a phantom breeze. They were the voices of spirits, twisted and in pain, trapped within the Blight's suffocating grip. Kale pressed on, his resolve hardening with every step. He was no longer just a boy from Oakhaven. He was the verdant heart's chosen, bearing its hopes and its wounds. He felt a deep, resonant ache within himself, a reflection of the jungle's suffering. He came to a vast cavern, so large that his weak emerald light couldn't illuminate its boundaries. In the center, a dark, churning pool of water pulsed with an eerie, sickly green luminescence. This had to be the entrance to the sunken heart, the sacred, mythical pool where the great spirit serpents coiled. But this pool was corrupted. Its life-giving waters turned stagnant and venomous. Strange, shadowy tendrils writhed beneath its surface, reaching out like grasping claws. As Kale approached the edge, a massive, shadowy form rose from the depths of the pool. It was a spirit serpent, immense and ancient, its body once shimmering with iridescent scales of emerald and sapphire. Now it was a grotesque mockery of its former self. Its scales were dull black, oozing the same viscous blight sap. Its eyes, once pools of gentle wisdom, glowed with the same malevolent red Kale had seen in the jungle cat. It thrashed, its movements violent and uncontrolled, tearing at the cavern walls with its immense, corrupted power. This was not just a creature. It was a guardian, one of the great spirit serpents, ancient protectors of the sunken heart. Seeing it so utterly consumed by the blight sent a wave of despair through Kale. If even a spirit serpent could fall, what hope did he, a mere fledgling, have? Great Spirit, Kale called out, his voice echoing in the vast cavern. What torments you? The serpent let out a thunderous roar, a sound that shook the very foundations of the cavern, sending dislodged stones tumbling from the ceiling. It lunged, its colossal head striking the ground mere feet from Kale, sending splinters of rock flying. This was a direct spiritual assault, not just a physical one. The serpent's corrupted essence was lashing out, trying to overwhelm him. Kale braced himself, chanting a shield spell Maeve had taught him, a protection woven from the strength of the earth and the clarity of the sky. A faint, shimmering barrier of emerald light flickered around him, barely holding against the serpent's corrupted might. He knew he couldn't defeat it by force. He had to understand the blight's true nature, its source. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to calm his racing heart, and reached out with his spirit sight, piercing through the spiritual chaos radiating from the serpent. He saw not pure malice but overwhelming pain. A searing, ancient wound. The blight wasn't just a parasite. It was a manifestation of a profound spiritual trauma, leeching energy from the verdant heart itself. He delved deeper, following the thread of pain. It led him past the spirit serpent, past the corrupted pool, to a crack in the far wall of the cavern, almost hidden by the shadows and the swirling miasma. It felt like a tear in the fabric of reality, a place where the jungle's very life force was being drained. The source? Kale whispered, pushing against the spirit serpent's overwhelming spiritual pressure. It's not the serpent, it's beyond it. Gathering all his strength, Kale concentrated his emerald light, not as a shield, but as a beacon, a focused beam of pure, untainted life energy. He aimed it directly at the crack in the wall, hoping to draw the serpent's attention away, or at least create a momentary distraction. The serpent recoiled, its vast head shaking as if in pain. The concentrated light was anathema to the blight that consumed it, a pure resonance that resonated with its own original, untainted spirit, creating internal conflict. This was Kale's chance. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, Kale sprinted past the thrashing serpent, heading directly for the crack. He squeezed through the narrow opening, the sharp rock scraping against his skin, Pip whimpering in terror. He emerged into a small, hidden chamber. This was the true sunken heart. But it was not as the legends described. Instead of a vibrant, pulsating core of the jungle's magic, he found a scene of profound devastation. In the center of the chamber lay a massive crystalline formation, once glowing with all the colors of the rainbow. This was the verdant heartstone, the very nexus of the jungle's life force, the spiritual anchor of the entire ecosystem. But it was shattered. A gaping, jagged fissure ran through its core, and from this wound, a steady stream of black, viscous energy flowed, not outward but inward like a reverse current draining the life from the heartstone. And around the heartstone, not a creature, but a spirit. A colossal, ancient spirit of the jungle, formless yet palpable, like the very breath of the forest given shape. It was writhing, not in anger, but in unimaginable agony. Its ethereal form, once vibrant green and gold, was now mottled with patches of inky black, pulsing like a festering wound. This was the true spirit of the verdant heart, and it was dying. Kale suddenly understood. The blight wasn't an external force. It was the manifested pain of the verdant heart itself, suffering from a grievous wound to its essence. The spirit serpent, the corrupted jungle animals, the fading plants, they were all symptoms, extensions of the central trauma. "What happened to you?" Kale whispered, tears pricking his eyes. He reached out with his mind, trying to touch the core of the spirit's pain. He was instantly flooded with a torrent of images. A blinding flash of light, centuries ago. A tremor that shook the earth, a shattering sound. He saw ancient shamans trying to mend the heartstone, pouring their own life force into it, but failing. He saw the slow, insidious spread of the blight as the heartstone's lifeblood leaked away, the jungle weakening, then slowly healing over the centuries, but the wound never truly closing, the pain never truly fading. Now the wound had reopened, exacerbated by something, perhaps the natural spiritual cycle, perhaps something else, and the blight was consuming everything with renewed ferocity. The core of the problem was not to fight the blight, but to heal the original wound, to mend the shattered heartstone. Kale knew what he had to do. Maeve had often spoken of the deepest shamanic healing, not just the mending of flesh, but the restoration of spirit, the offering of one's own life force to bridge the gap between worlds, between injury and wholeness. It was a dangerous, often fatal, undertaking for a shaman who wasn't fully prepared. He knelt before the shattered heartstone, its black fissure pulsing malevolently. He felt the pain of the verdant heart spirit wash over him, a suffocating wave of sorrow and decay. Pip, sensing the immense energy, burrowed deeper into Kale's tunic, letting out a series of frantic, high-pitched chirps. "I am Kale," he said, his voice trembling but firm, addressing the suffering spirit. "Last of the shamans of Oakhaven. I offer my strength, my spirit, to heal your wound. He placed his hands on the cold, shattered surface of the heartstone, focusing all his energy. He closed his eyes, drawing upon the deepest wellsprings of his own nascent shamanic power, calling upon the strength of his ancestors, the enduring spirit of Maeve, and the love he held for the verdant heart jungle. The emerald light flared from his hands, no longer weak and flickering, but a vibrant, pulsating beacon. It flowed into the heartstone, meeting the dark, draining energy. It was like pouring pure, vital water into a poisoned well. The darkness recoiled, hissed, and fought back, trying to overwhelm him, to drain him dry. Kale gasped, a searing pain shooting through his arms, then spreading through his entire body. He felt his own life force being tugged, stretched thin, threatening to snap. Images flashed through his mind. Maeve's wise, kind face, the ancient, stoic bark of Grandmother Willow, the vibrant, teeming life of Oakhaven. He would not fail them. He would not fail the jungle that had nurtured him. He pushed harder, pouring more of himself into the flow. His body trembled, sweat pouring down his face. The emerald light intensified, pushing back against the black energy. The fractured edges of the heartstone began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. The black ooze slowed, then reversed, drawn back into the fissure, replaced by pure, shimmering light. The vast, suffering spirit of the verdant heart responded. It swirled around him, its form coalescing slightly, no longer just a shapeless agony, but a vast, luminous presence. It was accepting his offering, working with him, its ancient essence meeting his young, vibrant spirit. With a final, desperate surge of will, Kale channeled everything he had. He felt a profound sense of lightness, as if his own spirit was detaching, becoming one with the jungle's essence. The chamber filled with blinding, emerald light, chasing away the shadows, illuminating the vastness of the heartstone. A resounding crack echoed through the chamber, not of breakage, but of mending. The jagged fissure in the heartstone closed, slowly at first, then seamlessly, knitting itself back together with threads of pure, incandescent energy. The black sap vanished completely, replaced by a radiant, pulsating heart of light. As the heartstone became whole, the vast spirit of the verdant heart let out a sound that was not a wail of pain, but a long, resonant sigh of relief, a sound of profound peace. Its form solidified, taking on the majestic, flowing shape of a colossal tree, its roots delving into the earth, its branches reaching for an unseen sky. It was healed. Kale collapsed, utterly spent, his hands falling away from the now glowing, whole heartstone. The emerald light from his body faded, leaving him drained, but a deep, profound peace settled over him. He had done it. He lay there for what felt like an eternity, listening to the soft, gentle thrumming of the restored heartstone. Pip, now chirping with relief, nudged his face, pulling him back to awareness. Slowly, painfully, Kale pushed himself up. The chamber was still bathed in the heartstone's soft, pure glow. He looked at his hands. They were trembling, but they also felt different, stronger, wiser. He wasn't just a fledgling shaman anymore. He had touched the very heart of the jungle, and it had transformed him. He made his way back through the crack in the wall. The vast cavern outside was no longer filled with oppressive darkness. The great spirit serpent, its scales shimmering with their original vibrant colors of emerald and sapphire, was coiled peacefully in the now pure, sparkling waters of the pool. It lifted its head, its golden eyes meeting Kale's. There was no aggression, only profound gratitude and a deep, ancient wisdom. It dipped its head in a silent bow, acknowledging his courage and his sacrifice. Kale returned the bow, his heart swelling with reverence. His journey back through the Skyfall Caves was a stark contrast to his descent. The air was clear, fresh, filled with the scent of damp earth and growing things. The ancient roots and crystals in the walls pulsed with soft, inner light. The mournful whispers were gone, replaced by the faint, joyful hum of newly liberated spirits. As he emerged from the weeping sentinel, the banyan tree was no longer weeping black sap. Its bark was vibrant, its leaves a rich, healthy green, and from its roots, glowing tendrils of spirit vines stretched out, pulsing with life, ready to cleanse and purify. The jungle around him was transforming. The thorny, black vines were receding, crumbling into dust, replaced by tender, new growth. The sickly fungi were gone, and the ground was once again carpeted with vibrant, phosphorescent moss. The silence was broken by the joyful calls of birds, the rustle of healthy leaves, the buzzing of insects. The verdant heart was singing its song once more, louder and clearer than ever before. He passed the clearing where he had encountered the corrupted jungle cat. Now it was a tapestry of vibrant, glowing fungi, and the air hummed with fireflies. He knew the cat would heal, its spirit freed, its body slowly recovering. When he finally stumbled back into Oakhaven, the sun was rising, painting the jungle canopy in shades of gold and rose. The village was stirring. Elder Maeve was sitting upright outside her hut, her face pale but her eyes clear and bright. Grandmother Willow stood tall and proud, her weeping branches shimmering with new, vibrant life. A gasp went through the village as they saw him. He was covered in dirt, scratches, and exhaustion, but his eyes, though tired, shone with an ancient light. He was no longer just Kale, the young apprentice. He was Kale, the shaman. Maeve smiled, a deep, knowing smile, and extended a trembling hand. Kale knelt, placing his own hand in hers. He felt the profound spiritual connection between them, stronger than ever before. The verdant heart. It sings again, Maeve whispered, her voice full of emotion. You did it, Kale. You truly are the heart healer. Kale looked out at the jungle, now vibrant and alive, its song filling the air. He had faced the deepest darkness, sacrificed himself, and emerged transformed. He was still young, his journey far from over, but he had found his place, his purpose. He was the guardian of the verdant heart, and its magic, now stronger than ever, flowed through him, ready for all the adventures yet to come. The jungle had been saved, and in saving it, Kale had finally found himself.